Good morning. My name is Scott Armanini. I am an angel investor. Have been here in Silicon Valley for the better part of the last 30 years, working directly with corporations, venture firms, and startups to try to bring game-changing innovations to market. The background that you see is USC's Iovine and Young Academy, where I am an adjunct assistant professor. I teach a course called Case Studies in Disruptive Innovation. And I try to teach my students what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. And we do so by examining the experiences of other entrepreneurs. So I'm happy to share thoughts with you today, specifically about what investors are looking for in startup pitches. And first thing, please don't tell me about your technology. Tell me about the problem that you're trying to solve. Tell me about why it's important and why nobody else has solved it the way that you do. Love your problem. Don't love the solution. So when you begin speaking, try to grab my attention by simply explaining, here's the problem. It's a big problem. It's an important problem. There's a lot of pain associated with it. The way that companies have tried to solve this hasn't been as successful as it could be. Our approach is different, and it's different for the following reasons. Now suddenly you have my attention, and I'm interested in learning more. When you begin talking about the size of the market space, please don't quote figures about it's worth $1 trillion or hundreds of billions of dollars. Nobody believes that. We've heard so many pitches that we let's just say we don't believe it anymore. So let's talk about the discrete problem space that you're trying to solve. And by that I mean, put some fences around it. Try to say, we're trying to solve this problem in this geography for these types of customers. And here's an example of the type of customer that we're trying to help. And when you phrase your presentation this way, it brings it to life. It makes it real. So I'm looking for realistic assessments of what the market opportunity is. I'm looking for the way that you determine what that market opportunity is. How did you assess it? What customers have you spoken with, or potential customers have you spoken with? I'm looking for the evidence that you've done the hard work, the difficult work of going out into the marketplace and ask intelligent questions of prospective customers and partners. I'd like to also understand that you've looked at some hypotheses and you've tried to experiment on those hypotheses. And you've tested the market to say, of all of the potential solutions to this problem, here's how we arrived at ours. So walk me through your thinking. Get me into your camp, so to speak. Help me understand why this problem is important to you and then important to me. Now we can have a conversation about your solution. One thing I'd like to understand, is there anything unique about it? And by unique, I mean where you've created intellectual property that has been patented and is therefore defensible. I want to understand if we can build a moat around your company, a moat that will protect it from potential competitors or other market entrants. If there's no moat, then anybody could replicate your solution, and therefore your advantage disappears. Even a first mover advantage will disappear. So we've described the problem. You've got my attention. You've made the problem real by realistically assessing the market opportunity. You've brought it to life by speaking about customers, the archetype of customer who is going to be buying your solution. Now, I want to discriminate here between users and buyers or customers. Users are people who use your system. Customers are people who pay fair value for using your system. It's relatively easy to get users. It's harder to get customers because now you're exchanging your good or service for their money, and hopefully at a relatively equivalent value. You're taking away pain that they experience in their daily lives, probably. It's worth something to get rid of that pain. And this comes down to the important question of pricing, to making certain that you are pricing your product in a way that equates to the value you are creating. And when you can do that, you have the beginning of what might be a sustainable business model. Then we have to determine if you can find lots of other customers like this so that you might be able to develop a business model that would scale. And then the question comes down to, well, how many customers are there out there like this? What will they be buying from you? How often will they be buying it from you? And for how long will they remain your customer? And when you can start answering questions such as, this customer is going to pay $10 a month for the next 3 years, and there are 50,000 or 100,000 or 500,000 customers just like him or her waiting for this solution. Now we have a discussion, a conversation we can have about the value of what you've created and why I might be interested in making an investment. And let me just pause there to get your reaction. Do you have evidence of what we've discussed? Have you done the homework of getting out of the building, as Steve Blank and Eric Ries and Alexander Osterwalder and so many other thought leaders would say? Have you gotten out of the building and done the hard work of speaking to prospective customers and business partners in order to understand if there's a there in your business? And if you haven't, then what you may have is a dream, an aspiration, but you also may not have a company or an idea that's worth funding. And that's really what it comes down to for prospective investors. Do you have an idea that is going to allow me to invest in and get a significant multiple on my invested capital? Now, most investors have a minimum threshold, typically of 3 to 4 times invested capital, that they're looking to receive in a very quick amount of time. And by quick, I mean in the next 3 to 5 years. And if they cannot see a clear path to how they're going to get their money back, then they're going to pass. Because investors are in the business to make money. That's what they do. Some investors are more socially minded and are interested in the impact of their investment in society, in addition to the financial returns. But fundamentally, all investors want a financial return. If you're going to be able to return 3 to 4 times invested capital in 3 to 5 years, there's an interest here. If you're going to be able to return potentially 10 or 20 or 30 times invested capital, even over a slightly longer period of time, then there's more interest. But there has to be a clear path for the investor to get their money back and then some. And unless you can demonstrate that clear path, it's very difficult for me to consider investing. And let me just pause there. So have you done the homework to create that clear path for me? If not, then there's more work to do. Now that we've talked about loving the problem, not your solution, now that we've talked about what's important to the investor, getting their money back and then some, now let's talk about your team and why you are uniquely positioned in order to solve the problem and to help make me money. What experience do you have building companies in the past? Have you failed or succeeded? If you failed, as most of us do, what did you learn from it? If you've succeeded and not failed, you may have just been lucky. So investors are looking for folks who have failed in the past and learned from their mistakes. Let me just stop there. So what domain expertise do you have? What experience do you have? Therefore, how can you develop trust in my mind that says, when I give you money, you're going to be a good steward of it, you're going to spend it wisely, and you're going to help me make lots of money? So these are questions that we want to hear in the pitches. Unfortunately, all of these are things that we rarely hear in pitches. The typical pitch involves a presentation about technology, which is, as I explained, not really of interest. We want to understand the problem. We want to understand that the problem is important to real customers. And after the technology, people have talked about the market opportunity that is going to be able to address the needs of tens of millions, hundreds of millions, maybe billions of people. And maybe the market is worth hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars. We know that's not true. You know that's not true. So please don't present your opportunity in those terms. And we know that the business model is not going to be like this, where the revenue just grows steadily. Nothing happens like that in life. Well, except maybe COVID cases, as we've seen. But in business, you rarely scale that way. So talk to us about the different checkpoints, the milestones that you're going to try to achieve, and how you're going to realize those milestones, how you're going to measure your efficacy, so that when you get from point A to point B to point C, we as investors will understand that you understand the business. And therefore, you can understand what information you need to get to move from A to B and from B to C. And when you get that information, you can apply it correctly. And let me just stop there for a moment. Now I want to understand who your board advisors are. What other thought leaders have joined with you in order to support your initiative? If you don't yet have a board, an advisory board, get one, because these are people that I would like to talk to better understand their thoughts and perspective before I make that investment decision. So build an advisory board with people that you trust and respect, and also who I, as an investor, would trust and respect. This will help to increase your credibility. It's not enough just to say we have this professor or this serial entrepreneur. Why is this professor? Why is this serial entrepreneur an advisor? What is it about what you've created, the problem that you're solving? What is it about both of those that have caused them to be interested? And how are they helping you? Is it an occasional phone call or meeting? Or are they hands-on, that is to say, rolling up their sleeves and helping you design a solution, or to develop the technical architecture, or to get introductions to prospective customers and partners? So it's not enough just to have names on a page. I want to understand what they're doing and why. Pause there. Okay. So that's what we want to see in a presentation, a pitch deck. Now, the length of the presentation will depend upon the amount of time you've been given. Some pitch competitions allow perhaps 3 minutes to 5 minutes, others a bit longer. So you've got to communicate this information in a very brief amount of time. So make certain what you communicate is, number one, truthful. Secondly, that it's important. And third, that we can assimilate the information, understand it, internalize it, and act on it. So economize the words and information in your presentation. Make certain that it can be clearly understood by an investor who probably is not a subject matter expert in your domain. May not even have an idea that the problem you're trying to solve is important. You have to explain it in simple language. And if you can do that, you're going to have a successful pitch. You're going to get a positive reception from the investment community, and you might even get a second meeting. Thank you. I hope you find this information helpful.